Mike McCool here in the Royal Examiner studio, and with me today is Tom Eshelman. Tom is a candidate for mayor of Front Royal. The election will be here before you know it.
Thank goodness.
We've invited all the candidates to come in. We've had quite a few, and we want them to come in more than once so that you can really get an idea, what the candidate's about, because today's world and people busy, it's hard to talk to all 15,000 people of our town one-on-one. So
Definitely.
Hopefully you can extrapolate some of your background and your information and some points you want to try to make that sets you apart from the other candidates.
Well, and that's the biggest, I kind of want to just tell everybody, I have great respect. Anybody that wants to run for office, first of all, kudos to them. I mean, I have great respect for them. I have great respect for our mayor and our council. And I talked to Mayor Cockrell. We just have a difference of opinion on the way we would like to lead. And I mean, ultimately, the decisions are made by council.
Sure.
The people elect council members to, drive home the points, and the mayor is there basically just to break a tie, but they provide the leadership, they provide the ideas. And, I wanted to, there's been some things said out there, and I just kind of wanted to clear some things up. I've been knocking on a lot of doors as well. There's 5,000 households, over 5,000 households, and you can only hit so many. I think I'm up in the mid 600-700 in there, but my feet are hurting. So anyway,
yeah, right.
Of course we had Festival of Leaves this past weekend too.
Yeah,
do a lot of volunteering.
Success.
Yeah, the feet hurt from that too. So, but no, the big difference is, like, for instance, I brought up water, and I'm glad to hear it's being talked about. I went back and, with all due respect to the mayor and to one of the councilmen that pointed out they've been talking about mayor, and I went back a year and watched every town video to the drought that we had last year. And on the 17th, there was a liaison committee meeting, and at the time, Board of Supervisor Dolores Oates brought up maybe it would be a great idea to create a committee. What a wonderful idea. Then the subject came up again at the next liaison committee, but it was about the county wanting to buy McKay Springs from us. And that's it, until it became a campaign issue in June. And then obviously we came into another drought. And it hasn't been just the past 2 years. I went back, did my research. In the past 20 years, they rate the droughts kind of like a hurricane. There's a D1, a D2, and a D3. D1 being moderate. But we've had 5 D2s, which are considered severe. 02, 07, 2010, and of course 2023 and 2024. And then 2023 and 2024 were called D3s. They were extreme droughts. So there's obviously a problem. And I watched the meetings with McKay Springs. I've done a lot of research. I contacted a geologist, very, very noted, got great credentials, and she's volunteered to help the town, if they decide they want her advice. She's somebody that if I was elected, I would create a water council, and I would definitely want to place somebody like that on there. But she feels the McKay Springs, it was bought a long time ago to serve the corridor. That's the original council minutes say that's what the purpose was. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition, and there's always a lot of talk. We always say that. But it's sitting there now, and it is a viable source of water, and they're doing the research for it, thank goodness. The biggest thing that we've seen is that it's never going to be a primary. It's going to be a secondary. But when we tap that resource, it's going to affect the water tables out in Cedarville and Reliance and all those folks that are out there. When you start taking 700,000 gallons of water a day out of something, it's probably going to have some sort of an effect. We don't know how much. And thank goodness, I watched the meeting where they've hired this research team, and they did mention at the end that you probably want to concentrate more on quarries, and that's been my big thing since June. We have 2 full quarries just sitting there in Riverton. They have to pump water out of them, and what a great opportunity for our town to possibly look into that and partnering with them. Another opportunity is creating a water authority. Right now Clark County is reaching out with water to Double Tollgate, so they're within 4 or 5 miles of us. Frederick County is already out on Guard Hill Road, so there might be an opportunity for the 3 entities to get together and create a water authority. I'm a big proponent on reservoirs. There's farmland on the edge of the river that is in flood zones. It's only good for farmland. Would the farmers be interested in selling it? You can't build on it. Would they be interested in selling it and us building a reservoir? In a reservoir, you take a 20, 30 acre reservoir that's 30 or 40 feet deep, you're going to have a lot of water.
Right. And there can also be some recreational opportunities.
Exactly right. I mean, there's a twofold. I even reached out to the Conservation Center to see about it if they have land, and I was just in touch with their real estate guy this week, and he said he'd like to meet. And I said, well, my official capacity would be as be serving on FREDA, being part of the Economic Development Authority for Front Royal. And I said, I'm only campaigning for mayor right now, but at least we're talking. And not just about McKay Springs. We're talking about McKay Springs. We're talking about quarries. We're talking about a regional authority. We need to find a direction for us, especially as we continue to grow. And
speaking of the growth, you're not going to grow without water. You're not going to get jobs without growth. And you're not going to get the growth without water. Everything goes back to water.
Exactly right. Well, and ultimately conserving it, these voluntary opportunities that people have to save water, those are all positive. We're allowed to take 400 million gallons a day or something.
4 million,
4 million gallons a day, and we're only taking 2.
Right.
And so people say, well, where's this water going to come from for the corridor? Well, it's kind of already allocated for it with the by right building. We just got to get the pumping stations and everything to build it. But ultimately, we got to find a secondary water source.
We can't control the river.
We can't.
No.
And there's people tapping into it down below us.
Yeah.
And, Loudoun County's tapping into it big time. And so water is huge, and I'm glad to see we're talking about it. If anything positive comes out of this campaign, it's become a forefront issue. It's being looked at, and I'm glad.
Well, these are multi-year projects. Even if you decided exactly on a plan, it might be 4, 5, 10 years before anything actually turned on the tap.
Well, and that's the thing. We lost a year. We went through a drought last year thinking, this was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and that's what caused me to do the research. In 20 years, we've had 7 droughts. 2 been severe. So we really need to look at, it needs to be a priority. And kind of just researching and getting to know that, I know that the council recently had a retreat, and they talked about a Citizens Academy, and they talked about the open house, all wonderful things, no two ways about it. But water wasn't on discussion at all. And I was like, how do you not make that a topic when you met back in January? So I'm glad it's being talked about now. So
you mentioned the water committee. One of the duties, or one of the things that the mayor can do other than breaking ties, is appoint committees, which is a way to get information from the community, study an idea, and bring it before council, because the council members can only do so much on their own. But committees is an important thing, and we've had multiple mayors over the last years, and the last committee, and I think I served on one, an economic, before we have our EDA and thing, that was on building up the economic structure of our town. That was Mayor Dar. So that's been quite a few mayors have gone by there, and we really haven't seen any other committees. And
I agree. It's a huge part of why of my platform, and I think they have one committee now, a transportation committee. I want to have several. I'm looking at. I want a parking authority, and knocking on doors. And there'll be some people that don't frequent Front Royal very often that are going to say, "You got to be kidding me." But Front Royal is prime for a parking garage. There needs to be a location chosen, and not just for the festivals, but a perfect example is on District Court Day. When Warren County District Court is in, it's hard to find a parking spot downtown when that's happening. So a parking garage downtown could be a partnership between the county and the town. But you got to start talking about it, and you got to start putting together a plan. And so I think a parking authority would be a perfect opportunity for 2 or 3 citizens to serve on that, research it. I can remember 40 years ago when Winchester put their first parking garage in, people were like, oh my gosh, what a joke.
We don't need that.
And now they got like 5 or 6 of them. So that's pretty crazy. So that's one of the things. I want to do an affordable housing committee. Fortunately, there is a developer coming into town that wants to do some affordable housing. Thank goodness for him. But there are other opportunities out there. I even brought, so folks can see, the Community Development Block Grants. So these are grants that can be applied for affordable housing. And there's Virginia Municipal League, Virginia Association of Counties. They focus on improvement in business. So by serving on the economic committee, one of the things I've heard too, probably when you knock on houses, you only get to talk to somebody probably about every 4th or 5th house. So you do get conversations. But the afternoon comes up all the time. And I expressed some interest in trying to do something, and a couple folks have taken it and run with it the other direction. Oh, Tom wants to take Front Royal money and do something for the developer. And I said, that's not the case at all. I got this. Back in 2016, the town of Front Royal applied for some grants, facade improvement grants. They were awarded to any of the businesses here on the Main Street in the downtown corridor. They had to apply. They had to fill out a form. I was one of the ones at the time that did it. And a lot of businesses improved their facades on their stores because of that grant. It's money we didn't have, but was made available to us through a grant. It was over $700,000. There are grants out there right now, not designed for the poor, not designed for affordable housing, but designed for town improvement. And there are low loans. Like I said, there's a company called the Virginia, I looked it up, Virginia Municipal League, and they advise business owners on how to apply for municipal low interest loans and stuff. And I mean, we're not doing it for him, we're just helping him. And it's an eyesore. It's been there, gosh, for close to 45 years now, is not functioning as anything. And I look at that as that's a function of economic development. We want to take something and we want to help it get done and get developed.
Because it's going to generate, other than just looking good, it's going to generate new businesses, income and taxes, which helps. The more we generate revenue, the less we have to charge everybody.
Well, exactly.
It comes all around the circle, doesn't
and
it?
again, it's not town dollars.
Right.
And, I got to say that over again. There's a couple people out there saying that. This is us assisting this landowner to get access to funding.
And sometimes it requires the town to be involved.
It does.
Some of these grants you just can't do as an individual.
Well, those facade grants are a perfect example back in 2016.
Yeah.
I did not have access to that money. The town had access to that money. They applied for it, got it, and in fact, they qualified for a second round, which was really phenomenal because all the first round was used up. And other things that funded was the shelter down at the gazebo. It funded some projects down there. So part of those monies were not only used for the facade grant program, but for those other businesses.
Everybody benefited.
Exactly. And to sit there and cover your eyes and not do the research or not help, that's not me. I mean, I try to help. I try to be a part of that.
Well, you also been labeled as, we're going to Fairfax, Loudoun County, Front Royal.
That's the funniest one. When you say you want organized growth, which it's already in the mission statement of Front Royal.
In our comp plan.
It is. And I'm like, so because I use those words, I got labeled Mr. Loudoun County or Fairfaxing. And it's so far beyond the truth. I was born and raised here. And, things change. I grew up out in Warren County. I was born on a dirt road, and I went to a school out on Rivermont Drive that had 4 rooms in it. Yeah, I'm old. I'm sorry. But that school no longer exists. That road is no longer dirt. I remember shopping in Newberry's and McCrory's.
Sure.
W.T. Grant was where the Rural King came in, and that was the biggest news to ever happen in Front Royal. The corridor didn't even exist. As an auctioneer, I was getting merchandise out of houses where Target sits right now.
Right.
So things change.
Right.
And people label it and they call it something. And it's like the neighborhood I live in. I live in Williamsburg Estates. The mayor lives right beside us. And where the high school is and all those houses are on a quarter of an acre. They don't look like Fairfax. They don't look like Loudoun County by any means. And so people get kind of scared when you talk about by right 2 houses on an acre, but if somebody wants to put a 3rd house on it, everybody, oh gosh, what are we going to do? Yeah. We're going to Fairfax Front Royal. Yeah. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. Happy Creek Knolls is our latest development. It's attractive. I spoke to somebody knocking on the doors there about a week ago, and 10 years ago, those houses didn't exist. And now they're contributing to our community. He's a Rotarian. One of them actually joined the Planning Commission. The parents are going to PTA meetings. They're part of our community. And, they're out in a neighborhood. The downtown hasn't changed because of it. The corridor actually had a very ill effect on downtown, but now downtown's recovered from that. Yeah. And ultimately, I don't want to scare anybody. If somebody comes to us with something practical that makes sense, why wouldn't we listen and why wouldn't we talk? Instead of sitting there and crossing our hands and saying, no, we're not going to Fairfax and Loudoun. Yeah. I don't understand the term because I've been to Fairfax and I've been to Loudoun. We're nowhere near that.
And we don't want to be, do we?
Definitely not. And like I said, I live in a neighborhood that sits on a 1/4 acre lot. The whole neighborhood is. And those houses didn't exist. The neighborhood that leads into the high school 20 years ago didn't even exist. The high school wasn't there. The middle school was getting built. So I just kind of come back and say, just quit fear mongering. Let's embrace folks. I mean, the other big thing I hear when you canvas on that side of town versus this side of town, and I'm pointing up to where the radio station is, folks on that side of town want a grocery store. It's not as important to folks on this side of town because they got a lot to choose from. But over our way, we have Martin's, and nothing against Martin's, but gosh, it'd be great to have another grocery store to compete against them.
When we used to badmouth Food Line, we wish it was back.
Well, and Food Line closed up because Martin's bought them.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and people say, oh, well, this and that, but it stayed closed for a year. Nobody was in there. And people say, well, why can't we get another grocery store? And that you and I both know, they have these demographic specifications put into a computer.
They know what works.
They know what works. And ultimately, what's going to get these other businesses, whether, if you want another grocery store, it's going to take people.
Right. It's
going to take Leach's Run development, the Happy Creek development. It's going to take all of that to happen, and then you're going to see more come. And there are people against it,
Right.
bringing in new business. I mean, everybody wants a Chick-fil-A, but Chick-fil-A has their demographics. They know what they want, and they're going to locate the store based on those demographics.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons from the FRIDA we entered into the Retail Strategies program. It's a 3-year commitment that we can get out of in a year. They showed us businesses that they could recruit, and quite frankly, we have about 70% of them. But there were some other businesses that they had, and ultimately, we thought, well, let's try these guys for a year, see what happens, and we can save taxpayer money if we feel it hasn't been effective, and cancel the second and third year. But I even suggested a boutique hotel, a grocery store, things like that. And ultimately, the county, they're building another hotel out there, and all these people that are mad about town growth. You put another hotel out in the county corridor with 100 rooms. Well, now you got 100 bathrooms flushing, and now you got washing all those clothes on a daily basis. They're utilizing more water than some of the houses that are going to go up. I mean, I just don't understand why everybody gets afraid and starts labeling people.
That's not their backyard.
Yeah, and some of those people. It's funny, the ones that are the most vocal don't live in town, or they lived in town and now they live out into the county. They live on nice big lots. They like their space, and I get it. I grew up on a 300-acre farm. I totally understand it. But again, Front Royal, in order to improve, in order to move forward, and nothing says it's bad now, but in order to grow and prosper and bring in new tax dollars, if we don't grow, the folks that live here now are going to foot the bill for all the expenses. And expenses aren't going down, they're going up. By having new families in here paying into that tax base, it keeps our taxes low, and they contribute back to the tax base. And so again, I'm not Mr. Loudoun County, Mr. Fairfax. There are ways to look at growth. It's a zoning issue. And again, most of the neighborhoods right now that people live in are sitting on quarter-acre lots on the new housing. And again, why wouldn't we at least talk about it?
Right.
Especially when proffers are offered.
Right.
Proffers are money's paid to the town and to the county to allow them to build houses. I mean, if all of a sudden you can only put 2 houses on an acre lot, the builder wants a return on that. So, that house is going to be more expensive, to where if he's able to get 3 houses on that lot, makes a difference.
Yeah. Councilman Wood was in yesterday, and we talked, and he mentioned this development that we just got the proffers for. The lot size, even though they've increased it 22 more houses, I think was that like 104 versus 80 something. The idea was the lot size is still bigger than the subdivisions on both sides.
It is. It's a few people placing a lot of fear in folks. And I'm sure, they'll write editorials to you and me about this conversation. But, I'm trying to make sense from the standpoint it's worth the discussion to find out what a builder can do and how it's going to improve. And just like you said, this development going in, I think it's called Rappahannock LLC or something like that. They're putting in 22 more houses, but yet Front Royal and Warren County are going to get a pretty good return on investment. They're going to have an investment to the county school system, so that's us helping them. They're going to give us land to straighten out that nasty, dangerous turn on Happy Creek Road. They're going to put in a public park. I mean,
the lot sizes are still bigger than...
And the lot sizes are still bigger than the houses next to it in Happy Creek Knoll. So ultimately, how is that a bad thing? these folks are going to live 2-3 miles out of town, and guess what they're going to do? When they come home at night, they're going to come into our grocery stores and shop. They're going to come into our restaurants, and they're going to make sure that these stores that are down on Main Street in Front Royal stay down there, that they can, prosper and live. I mean, the biggest thing is you go through these turnovers in storefronts, and you hate to see that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, these are people that will be part of our community, just like folks are now. And so I just want to tell folks that it's not this, raging thing that we want to become somebody else. It's just, do we want to look at it and manage it properly?
It's about leadership.
Well, I would like to think
or at
that.
least direct, it's like herding cats, and that's what I always say. They always say, I've heard mayors in the past say, when you're working with council, it's like herding cats. What you do, you have, there's 6 of you, there's 6 people, all have different ideas, and people they're being lobbied by the public to try to get what they want.
And I mean, I believe in physical responsibility, and I believe in transparency. I think that's some of the sayings that are out there in the campaign. That's all definitely good, but then there's actions going on. For instance, there was about a little over $550,000 worth of extra cash left over in the budget this past year. And, it was discussed about in a work session. If you watch the video, you could see it. But when it was voted on publicly in council, it was just put into a consent agenda. And all that money went to a sidewalk that's not going to be built for 2 or 3 years. And it's going to benefit the children that walk from Skyline High School up to the 7-Eleven. I get it. What a wonderful thing. But, we've got a youth center that needs funding. We're the only community around that doesn't have an assistant town manager to help our town manager. I mean, when you got Strasburg and Mount Jackson and Winchester and Berryville all having assistant town managers, we could have funded that position with a civil engineering background to help Joe, our current town manager.
I think we're out of now, town engineer and an assistant.
We are. So you bring that person in so that when Joe retires in a few years, congratulations, somebody's ready to take the reins. I mean, we avoid that situation we encountered a couple of years ago where we appointed somebody, interim manager, and, that didn't work totally in our benefit. So, that happened, and I don't think that was totally put in front of the public. Again, we talked about the water, and currently talking about the development of Happy Creek. There is a major lawsuit called HEPTAB. It was filed last September. It's hard to find anything out about it because it's never discussed openly. It's discussed behind closed doors. But I have found out from talking to the attorney for HEPTAB that the town is not allowing the attorney to talk to them. And this has been going on for a year. The lawsuit is still pending. And I look at folks, and when I talk to them at the houses, and I said, "Did you know this lawsuit exists?" And I don't know what you're talking about. And I said,
it's like $6 million.
It's $6 million that town dollars could be lost. It's a roll of the dice. And ultimately, the way I look at it is, why don't we talk? Put that attorney there and that attorney there, and have the mayor and a county, the county administrator. Why aren't they all at the table? What can we work out here? What do we need to do? I mean, HEPTAB was actually going to decrease the density, and folks are, hammering at them. They wanted to go from 450 houses down to, I think, like 355. Don't quote me on that number, but they wanted to decrease the density, which means the proffers would be less. Times have changed. It took them a long time.
I think that was an over age 55 community as well.
Age 55 came in.
No impact on our schools.
Yep, and they were ready. They were ready to sign the dotted line, and the lawsuit happened, and it just all went south. Yeah. And an over 55 community for folks, it's concentrated on folks, obviously over the age of 55. Guess what? No children in the county schools, yet they're still paying town and county taxes.
Right. And most of them have money.
Yes, and they eat out a lot.
Yeah.
And they shop at the grocery stores. I mean, all of a sudden you can see where there's a domino effect. And again, it doesn't have to be out of control. Please understand me, and there's a couple people out there, like I said, they'll label it. It's not out of control to sit and listen and talk and see what's going to benefit the community.
Right. You can still say no.
Definitely. There's no two ways about it. Yeah. So, I just feel like, and it's funny, I had a guy say, "Oh, I'm totally against growth." I said, "Well, you realize the house you live in didn't exist 20 years ago." I never thought about it that way.
That's right.
And so when you talk to people, it kind of makes sense. Yeah. But,
Well, you're wearing a label also as independent candidate. You want to talk about that?
Well, I can definitely talk about that. I mean, town politics and are not supposed to be partisan. It's in the Virginia Code that the mayor and the council running for town are not to be part of a party. You're not supposed to be, recommended or voted on by a party. So the Republican Party here hasn't played by that rule. They don't nominate somebody, they endorse somebody. So, and that's fine. I mean, it is. The Democratic Party has not endorsed, has not, recommended anybody. No way. And I'm running as an independent because I don't want to be forced to do things for the community that a party wants me to do. And, a perfect example of that was laid out just a couple weeks ago when they had the vote on Rappahannock. One of the councilmen, who is a Republican and on the Republican, endorsed by the Republicans, voted different from his other two councilmen on there. They're also Republicans.
Endorsed Republicans.
Endorsed Republicans, correct. He did what he thought was best for the community and agreed to do the 22 houses. He saw the almost $1 million worth of proffers being given. He saw the land being donated to Front Royal. He saw them putting in a public park, and he realized that they were putting in all of the infrastructure, storm drains, and in town folks that live next to it, they weren't against it. They said, I knew it was going to happen one day. They just they had specific questions about storm runoff and drainage runoff. Good questions. But these folks came in the next day and they just labeled him. Oh, he, anti, don't vote, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's a small group of people, but the man, the councilman, did what he thought was best for the community. He didn't follow a party. And that there just substantiated the fact why I'm glad I'm an independent. Will I vote for some people? Not all the people running for office are independents, obviously, and I have my choices. But again, town is not supposed to be that way. Right. It's supposed to be nonpartisan for the exact reason that what happened to that councilman being basically, touted and said, no, don't vote for him. He went against the other Republicans on his party. And that's not the way town politics should be. And I applaud him. I mean, it was very, he was upset that, he said, here I think I'm doing what's right, and this happens. And so I applaud him. And I mean, he listened, it was talked about, and, I'm glad it was passed.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you coming in and talking to us. No. I think you're give our readers and watchers or viewers a lot of information to consider. Well, the election is just right around the corner. 19
days, and I'm counting. And again, total respect for people that run for office. The folks out there, and I kind of look at them. If you can disagree with somebody's politics, and I'm sure there'll be somebody that disagrees with mine today. I mean, Lori and I had a nice talk out at the fairgrounds, and I said, Lori, we've been lifelong friends. And I'm talking about Mayor Cockrell. I said, known your dad, your family, went to school with your brother. And I said, but, we have no disagreements with each other. We just have I have disagreements with the way we're going to lead in the future. And they have their vision, and it's a great vision. I just want to do a little bit more. I want to start going to the next level, taking Front Royal up a step to accommodate things. And, that's the difference. But I have respect for anybody that wants to do it. And they shouldn't be downgraded. They shouldn't be slammed. You should applaud their efforts and just disagree with their policy.
Yeah, okay. Well, I appreciate you coming in and sharing these ideas with us. And maybe we'll squeeze one more in before the election. We'll see.
If my feet are still handling it. But, yeah, I just look at folks. I'm Tom Eshelman, and I'm a candidate for mayor, and I'd love to have your support. So
thanks again, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.